Retirement was supposed to be the reward. 42 years of alarms screaming before sunrise, bad coffee in break rooms, managers half my age explaining efficiency to people who actually knew how things worked, and customers who believed yelling counted as a personality. I had survived all of it. I had done the sensible thing, the patient thing, the boring thing. I saved. I planned. I waited. And at 67 years old, I finally bought peace. It came in the shape of a small ranch house on 8 acres outside Cedar Hollow, Tennessee. White siding, green shutters, a long gravel driveway, and a front porch wide enough for 2 rocking chairs, 1 small table, and the kind of silence you only understand after spending most of your life being interrupted. Please subscribe my channel. I really need thank you. My wife Elaine called it our little kingdom. I called it the first place in my life where nobody could tell me what to do before breakfast. For almost a year it was perfect. Then my son-in-law looked at my porch, my land, my quiet mornings, my locked workshop, and saw something I did not see. Opportunity. I didn't know it yet, but the peace I had spent 4 decades earning was about to be turned into a family negotiation. And by family negotiation, I mean a hostage situation with better table manners. My daughter, Rachel, married Brad Collins 3 years before everything happened. Rachel is my only child, smart, gentle, too forgiving for her own good, and cursed with the belief that most people mean well if you explain things clearly enough. Brad did not suffer from that problem. Brad worked in business development, which, as far as I could tell, meant wearing expensive shoes and saying sentences that had no measurable weight. He was handsome in that manufactured way. Good haircut, good watch, good smile. The kind of man who made eye contact just long enough to make you think he respected you, then looked past your shoulder like he was checking whether a better opportunity had entered the room. Elaine liked him at first. He's ambitious, she said. So was Napoleon, I said. She told me not to be dramatic. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being historically aware. Rachel and Brad had 1 little boy, our grandson Milo. 5 years old, curly hair, permanently sticky fingers, and the only human being alive who could interrupt my coffee without risking consequences. Most Sundays, they came for dinner. Elaine cooked too much food. Rachel helped clean up. Milo chased grasshoppers in the yard. Brad complimented the property in a way that never felt like a compliment. "Man, this place has potential," he said one evening, looking across my field. I remember that word. Potential. People only say your home has potential when they think it should become something else. I said, it already reached its potential. That's why I bought it. Brad laughed, but not because he thought it was funny. The request came on a warm Sunday in May. Elaine had made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans with bacon, and the peach cobbler she only makes when she wants everyone to love her more than they already do. We ate on the porch because the weather was showing off. Milo was asleep inside on the couch with 1 shoe off. Rachel sat beside Brad, twisting her wedding ring. I noticed that before anybody said anything. Old men notice rings, eyes, and exits. Brad leaned forward with both elbows on his knees. "Tom," he said, "we wanted to run something by you." I looked at Elaine. She looked at me. No good sentence has ever started with, "We wanted to run something by you." That sentence is just a polite little suitcase full of trouble. "Go ahead," I said. Brad smiled. "So, you know my parents have been struggling since the condo situation." I did know. His parents, Linda and Carl, had sold their condo 6 months earlier because Linda said she wanted to simplify. Then she discovered that simplifying still required paying rent somewhere. Carl had some health problems, mostly knees and blood pressure, and Linda had what I would describe as a medical allergy to responsibility. "They need breathing room," Brad continued. "Space, fresh air, somewhere calm." I took a sip of coffee. There it was, coming down the tracks with its lights off. Brad turned slightly and gestured toward the old guest cottage behind my workshop. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchenette, and a roof I had repaired myself the previous fall. I used it for tools, fishing gear, and the occasional visiting cousin who understood the sacred rule of leaving after 3 days. "We were thinking," Brad said, "just temporarily, Mom and Dad could stay in the cottage." Elaine's face softened immediately. Rachel looked down at her lap. I looked at Brad. "How temporary?" I asked. 3 months, he said quickly. Too quickly. Maybe 4. Just until we help them get back on their feet. I nodded slowly. "Brad, that cottage is not rental property. It's storage and guest space." "Right, but they're not renters," he said. "They're family." There it was. The magic word, family. The word people use when they want the benefits of a contract without the inconvenience of terms. I'll think about it, I said. Brad smiled before I finished the sentence. That was the first thing I filed away. The next week was a campaign. Linda called Elaine twice. Carl sent me a text that sounded like Linda had written it while holding his phone hostage. Brad dropped phrases like, Milo would love having both sets of grandparents close, and Rachel's been losing sleep over this. Rachel, interestingly, said almost nothing. That bothered me more than the pressure. Then Brad came by alone on a Wednesday afternoon. I was in the workshop sharpening mower blades. He walked in without knocking, which told me something right away. Men who respect boundaries knock before entering another man's workshop. He looked around at my tools, my old radio, my labeled drawers, my locked cabinet. You keep this place organized, he said. I like knowing where things are. He smiled. That's actually part of what I wanted to talk about. I turned off the grinder. Brad put on his serious face, the one he probably used when convincing people to invest in things they didn't understand. I think you're hesitant because you're looking at this emotionally, he said. That almost made me laugh. My property, my cottage, my tools, my retirement. Yes, Brad, emotions did sneak into the room. He ignored that. Rachel is under a lot of stress. My parents are under stress. Elaine is worried, and honestly, Milo feels tension. Kids pick up on these things. I looked at him for a long moment. There are moments in life when a man shows you the tool he plans to use against you. Brad had just laid his on my workbench, my daughter, my wife, my grandson. All polished up and ready. I'll talk to Elaine, I said. He smiled again. That was the second thing I filed away. I said yes 2 days later. But before Linda and Carl moved in, I made 3 phone calls. The first was to my attorney, a woman named Denise, who had once handled a boundary dispute for me, with the calm joy of a surgeon removing a splinter. The second was to a retired sheriff's deputy I knew from church. The third was to a security company. Elaine watched me install a new lock on the workshop door. You're being a little much, she said. Probably. You think they're going to steal your wrenches? No, I said. I think people behave better when they know where the lines are. I did not tell her about the cameras right away, not because I was hiding from my wife. Elaine and I had been married 39 years. She knows when I'm lying before I do. But I knew Elaine had a soft heart. If she knew I was documenting things, she might act differently. And I needed everyone natural. I wasn't planning revenge. I was documenting. The cameras went up quietly. One facing the driveway, one on the porch, one covering the cottage entrance, one inside my workshop, one near the back gate, all legal, all on my property, all motion activated, all backed up to the cloud. I also wrote a simple occupancy agreement, no rent, 90 days, no guests without permission, no access to the workshop, no changes to the property, no duplicate keys, signed by Linda, Carl, Brad, Rachel, Elaine, and me. Brad laughed when I handed it to him. Tom, come on. Is all this necessary? No, I said. Necessary comes later. This is easy. He didn't like that. Linda and Carl arrived on a Friday morning with a rented truck, 14 boxes, 2 recliners, and Linda's opinion, which apparently needed its own parking space. The first thing Linda said was, "Oh, it's smaller than the photos made it look." There were no photos. I had never sent photos. That was the third thing I filed away. Carl shook my hand and thanked me. He looked tired. Not lazy tired, worn down tired. The kind of tired that comes from living too long with someone who turns every inconvenience into a courtroom. I appreciate this, he said quietly. I know, I told him. And I did. Carl wasn't the storm. He was debris being carried by it. The first week was tolerable. Linda complained about the mattress, the water pressure, the rural smell, and the fact that squirrels had too much access to the yard, which remains one of the strangest accusations I've heard against nature. The second week, she started leaving things on our porch. Flower pots, a wicker table, a ceramic goose wearing a yellow scarf. Elaine thought it was harmless. I moved the goose back to the cottage. The goose returned. I moved it again. The goose returned with a smaller goose. That was when I realized Linda did not decorate. She colonized. By week 3, Brad started visiting more often. He would pull into the driveway around 6, stay 40 minutes, and leave looking satisfied. He rarely came inside our house. Mostly, he went straight to the cottage. The driveway camera caught every visit. The porch camera caught the conversations Linda had afterward. One evening, I was drinking coffee in my recliner when my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Cottage entrance. I opened the app. Linda stood outside the cottage on speakerphone with Brad. I'm telling you, honey, they barely use half this place, she said. Your father could put a ramp right there, and the workshop could easily become another living area. Brad said something I couldn't hear. Linda laughed. No, Rachel doesn't need to know everything yet. She gets emotional. Let me work on Elaine first. Tom is stubborn, but Elaine is the softer one. I sat very still. Across the room, Elaine was doing a crossword puzzle, chewing the end of her pen like she'd done for 39 years. The softer one. I saved the clip. Then I made more coffee. By week 4, the little boundary crossings became a schedule. Linda started using our trash cans instead of hers. Brad borrowed my ladder without asking. A key to the side gate disappeared from the hook in the mudroom. Rachel stopped coming over with Brad. That last one mattered most. When I called her, she sounded tired. Everything okay, sweetheart? Yeah, Dad. Just busy. Busy or managed? Silence. Then she said, Brad thinks I'm making things harder by worrying. I looked out the window toward the cottage. Well, I said, worry is what honest people do before dishonest people explain why everything is fine. She gave a sad little laugh. That laugh stayed with me. The midpoint came on a Thursday morning. I was at the feed store buying grass seed when my phone buzzed 3 times. Workshop camera, motion. Backgate camera, motion. Cottage entrance, motion. That is not a combination a man likes to see before lunch. I opened the workshop feed. Brad was inside my workshop, not near it. Inside it, he had the missing side gate key in one hand and a clipboard in the other. Linda stood beside him. Carl was in the doorway, looking uncomfortable enough to qualify as furniture. Brad walked along my workbench, taking pictures. Pictures of my tools. Pictures of my electrical panel. Pictures of the storage wall. Then a stranger stepped into frame. Man in a polo shirt, measuring laser in hand, contractor. I sat in my truck in the feed store parking lot and watched my son-in-law show a contractor my private workshop like he was giving a tour of property he owned. The audio came through clear enough. Brad said, if we convert this, my parents can stay long-term and Tom still has the main house. Everybody wins. The contractor asked, owner approved? Linda said, it's family land, not yes, not approved family land. Carl said, Brad, I don't think Tom knows about this. Brad answered, he will. Once there's a plan, it'll be easier for him to accept. I turned off the feed. There are different kinds of anger. There is hot anger, which makes men stupid. Then there is cold anger, which sharpens the edges of everything. I drove home slowly, not because I was calm, because I wanted to stay useful. When I pulled in, Brad's SUV was still there. The contractor's truck was back near my workshop. Linda was pointing at the side wall like a queen, choosing where to hang a portrait. I got out of my truck. Brad saw me first. His face changed for half a second. Just half a second. Long enough for the truth to show its socks before putting its shoes back on. Tom, he said brightly. Good timing. Seems like it. Linda smiled. We were just brainstorming. In my locked workshop? Brad lifted both hands. No harm done. We were trying to solve a problem. That's interesting, I said, because from where I'm standing, the problem appears to be holding a clipboard. The contractor looked at Brad. Sir, he said to me, I was told this was approved. I bet you were. Brad's smile tightened. Tom, don't make this ugly. I looked at the contractor. You should leave. He left fast. Smart man. Good shoes, too. Brad tried to talk. Linda tried to talk louder. Carl stared at the gravel. I held up one hand. Dinner. Sunday. Everyone. Rachel included. Brad said, that's not necessary. It is now. Sunday came with heavy air. Elaine knew by then. I showed her the clips Friday night, not all of them. Enough. She sat at the kitchen table watching Linda call her the softer one. Elaine did not cry. She did something worse. She got quiet. In 39 years of marriage, I have learned that my wife's silence is not empty. It is construction. By Sunday evening, everyone sat in my living room. Rachel looked pale. Brad sat beside her with one arm around the back of the couch, not touching her, but claiming the space behind her. Linda sat upright like she had been invited to judge a pie contest. Carl looked like a man hoping the floor might open kindly. Elaine sat beside me. I placed a folder on the coffee table. Brad looked at it. What's this? Clarity. I opened the folder and pulled out the occupancy agreement. 90 days. No property changes, no duplicate keys, no workshop access. Everyone signed. Linda rolled her eyes. Tom, honestly, paperwork between family is so cold. Elaine spoke before I could. What's cold is calling me soft behind my back while planning to use me. Linda's mouth opened. Nothing came out. A rare blessing. I connected my phone to the television. Brad sat forward. Tom. I played the first clip, Linda on the cottage porch. Rachel doesn't need to know everything yet. She gets emotional. Let me work on Elaine first. Rachel looked at Brad. What does she mean? I don't need to know everything, Brad said. That's taken out of context. I nodded. Good point. Then I played the second clip, Brad in my workshop. Once there's a plan, it'll be easier for him to accept. The room went still. Rachel's face changed in a way I will never forget. It was not shock exactly. It was the moment a person realizes the smoke they've been smelling is coming from inside the house. You told me Dad was considering it, she said. Brad rubbed his forehead. I said he might consider it. No, Rachel said. You told me he was being difficult, but he knew it made sense. Linda jumped in. Honey, we were only trying to make things easier. For who? Rachel asked. Linda blinked. Rachel turned to Brad. Did you use Milo to pressure me? Brad's jaw tightened. That is not fair. It was the first honest thing he said all night. It wasn't fair. Not to Rachel. I played the third clip, Brad taking my ladder. The fourth clip, Linda moving the gate key from our mudroom. The fifth clip, the contractor asking, owner approved? Linda saying, it's family land. Carl closed his eyes. Rachel stood up. Milo was never part of this, was he? She asked Brad. You kept saying he needed stability. You kept saying this was for him. Brad said it was for all of us. No, Rachel said. It was for control. She said it softly, as sometimes where truth lands hardest. Linda began to cry. Not real crying. Performance crying. Dry eyes, wet voice. I cannot believe we're being treated like criminals. I looked at her. Linda, you took a key, entered a locked workshop, invited a contractor, discussed converting my property, lied to my daughter, and tried to manipulate my wife. Criminal is your word. I was going with ambitious. Carl made a sound that might have been a laugh, trying to escape and choosing survival. Brad stood. This is ridiculous. You're blowing this up over a misunderstanding. I stood too, slowly, not dramatically. My knees don't allow drama without warning. No, Brad. A misunderstanding is when I ask for unsweet tea and get sweet. This was a plan. He looked at Rachel. Are you really going to let him talk to me like this? Rachel stepped away from him. That was the moment he knew. Not when the clips played. Not when Linda got exposed. When Rachel moved one step away, I slid a paper across the coffee table. Denise prepared this. Your parents have 7 days to vacate the cottage. The agreement allows immediate termination for unauthorized access and property modification attempts. I'm giving 7 days because Carl has bad knees and I am not a monster. Linda said, you can't just throw us out. I'm not throwing you. I'm ending a temporary arrangement you tried to turn permanent without consent. Brad pointed at me. You'll regret this. Elaine stood then. My sweet Elaine. My crossword puzzle Elaine. My peach cobbler Elaine. She looked at Brad like he was a stain she had finally identified. No, she said. We regretted trusting you. This is the correction. Nobody had much to say after that. Funny how evidence shortens conversations. The 7 days were unpleasant, but educational. Linda stopped speaking to me, which improved my mornings by nearly 40%. Brad came twice and tried to corner Rachel in the driveway. The cameras caught both conversations. In one, he told her I had poisoned the family. In the other, he said she was choosing her father over her marriage. Rachel answered, no, Brad, I'm choosing reality over whatever this is. I saved that clip too, not for revenge. For her, in case she ever doubted herself later. Carl came to the porch the morning they left. He held his cap in both hands. I'm sorry, he said. You were in a hard position. I stayed quiet. Yes, I said. You did. He nodded. He deserved that. Then he surprised me. Linda always thinks if she pushes long enough, the world becomes hers. I looked toward the cottage where Linda was supervising Brad loading boxes while touching none herself. And Brad? Carl sighed. Brad learned too well. We shook hands. Linda left without saying goodbye. She took both ceramic geese. I considered that her first act of genuine kindness. Brad came last. Rachel was not with him. She had taken Milo to Elaine's sister for the afternoon because she said she didn't want him around adult foolishness. Good phrase. Covers a lot of ground. Brad stood at the edge of my porch. You know, he said, this didn't have to become a war. It wasn't a war, I said. It was a trespass with paperwork. He gave me that smile again, the polished one. But it didn't fit his face the way it used to. I hope you're happy. I looked past him at my field, my gravel drive, my workshop door, my wife standing in the kitchen window, and the empty patch of porch where the ceramic goose had once threatened my peace. I'm retired, Brad. Happy is not too much to ask. He left. 2 months later, Rachel and Milo moved into a small rental house 15 minutes from us. She did not file for divorce immediately. Real life is slower than stories. Pain has paperwork. Love leaves fingerprints, even when it leaves bruises no one can see. But she started counseling. She got her own bank account. She changed passwords. She began laughing again in small pieces. One Saturday, she came over with Milo. Elaine made peach cobbler. I grilled burgers. Milo ran through the yard with a plastic sword, defending the kingdom from invisible dragons. Rachel sat with me on the porch after dinner. How did you know? She asked. I thought about Brad's smile before my answer. Linda's fake compliments, the missing key, the word potential, the way Rachel had twisted her ring that first night. I didn't know everything, I said. I just paid attention. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I wish I had. You will now. The sun went down slowly over the field, the kind of sunset that makes even fence posts look wise. Elaine came out with coffee and sat in her rocking chair. The porch boards creaked under her feet. Milo fell asleep on the outdoor sofa with one shoe off, same as always. For the first time in months, nobody was asking for anything. Nobody was measuring my walls. Nobody was calling my land family land. Nobody was moving ceramic geese into strategic positions. Just wind in the trees, coffee in my hand, my wife beside me, my daughter breathing easier, and my grandson safe enough to sleep through the quiet. Some people see an older man with a porch, a workshop, and a soft voice, and they mistake peace for weakness. They think because you don't argue over every little thing, you won't fight over the big things. They think patience means permission. It doesn't. Sometimes patience is a locked door. Sometimes it is a signed agreement. Sometimes it is a camera pointed at the driveway, quietly saving the truth while liars rehearse their version. Retirement is still the reward. But peace, I learned, is not something you buy once and keep forever. You protect it. And these days, when I sit on my porch with Elaine, watching Milo chase fireflies across the grass, I keep my coffee hot, my workshop locked, and my geese exactly where they belong. Now we're on my porch.